and it was just kind of a crazy thing, Sonny. Hold on, someone is just ding-donged in my house here. Hey, Sonny, I'm going to respond to you, but I got to move my fat dog out of here.
Okay.
All right, I can't see your face. Do you want to not do faces right now? Just so that we can...
It's all right. Now you have to see your face.
Welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. My name is TJ McConaughey. I am joined, as always, by my best friend, Sonny Saltalamacchia. Sonny, we've made it to 12 episodes. Did you ever think that was possible?
You know, when we first started the podcast, I thought it was possible. But when we first started this episode, I believe this is the 5th take to start this episode. So I was starting to be a little concerned. But I've found some faith and some hope once again, TJ.
Remember when I convinced you to do this podcast and I literally said, dude, we're just talking about 20 minutes a week. I think we spend 20 minutes in just setup every single week. So I was wrong. You were right. You told me that would never happen. And so I am a man who has been humbled by the podcasting thing, but I'm still excited because we got some randos out there who've been listening to our podcast every single week, commenting on our page, and the conversation is going out from this place. So what else could you ask for, Sonny?
We love the randos. We love the casuals. We love the trolls. And, you know, TJ, they say you're not successful until you have haters. And I don't think we have any haters yet. So we need to step it up a notch and get some haters. Because then we'll know we've reached true success.
We got to be hated on to reach true success. But, you know, that is the height of the information technology media world, is that you don't know you're successful until somebody's like, I don't like them. Somebody has a take that we don't like.
We need a rival podcast. We should just like start taking pot shots. Like, have you ever listened to Controlled Chaos? Like, what are they even doing over there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Justin is an idiot, man. I don't know why anybody would listen.
He doesn't even have any hair on top of his head. What the heck?
Yeah, man. How did he get Andy Stanley? I mean, did he tie him up? What was that?
I don't know. He probably had his administrative assistant reach out or something like that.
Oh my goodness. So anyway, yeah, I love that. Let's start taking pot shots at Controlled Chaos and see if they can hit us back a little harder. All right. Well, Sonny, what do we got planned for the show today?
Back to our regular format, TJ McConaughey, 3 episodes. 3 subjects. First one is Win of the Week. Me and you talk about what's going well in our programs. All praise the Lord, obviously. Second topic is Tales from the Fringe, which is everybody's favorite topic, from casuals and randos to those who aren't those. And then lastly, it's the question of the week. I've only been allowed to ask one since my epic Kevin and Winnie versus Jim and Pam, who's a better love story.
It wasn't epic.
Typically we like
terrible.
to. It was a great question.
No,
I think
it was terrible.
I think it was the most popular question. We try to keep the question aligning to youth work and stuff like that. So yeah, there you go. 3 subjects.
3 subjects. That's awesome. All right. Well, then let's stop. We don't need any more chatter in the beginning. Let's get to the show.
To the show.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. And when you subscribe to this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We desperately need your approval.
All right, Ted Francis McConaughey Jr., win of the week. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I want you to go first, technically, because you won the last win of the week that we did.
Did I win? There was some controversy.
No, actually, you didn't win that one. But last week we gave you the default win because we questioned you instead of doing the win of the week. So if we would have had a win of the week, I'm guessing you would have won it because
here's the deal:
to LA.
If there's a poll, the poll needs to go from the start of the episode and needs to stop when the recording starts for the next episode. Because that way, when we're recording for the next episode, we know who wins. No more of this dragging on for 2 weeks.
There's been some absentee ballots that have come in and
no. We're not casting a vote for 16-year-olds to start voting in this dang thing, okay? It stops when we record the next episode. period.
A little bit of, we're going to call this Pollgate, Pollgate. There's a little bit of a problem with our voting on this.
Fringe Pollgate.
Anyway, Britt, as you're listening to this episode, remember, when you set the poll, make sure it ends before that we record the next podcast so that there is no controversy. And
let the record know your wife sets up the poll, and that's probably why it's even a tie at this point.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, you know Britt as much as I know Britt. She probably would favor your wins of the week anyway.
Well, most people would.
We're tied.
That's what I'm saying. We've
literally you talk so much smack, but we have 4 wins to 4 wins at this point. So
because your wife runs the polls. That's what I just said. Just put that out there. Anyway, okay.
Right.
Win of the week.
Rachel,
time.
you can run the poll if you'd like. I'm sure Britt would gladly hand it off.
Win of the week. Win of the week.
Win of the week. What's your win of the week, Sonny?
All right. I don't mean to keep talking about the one thing I've been talking about for the last 5 weeks, but it's kind of a big deal.
Okay.
And look,
what the heck?
Things keep happening from it, okay? and I got to talk about it. Okay. But this has nothing to do with the Grammys. So there's been a lot of, kind of low-level publicity, right, from the program that we were running and stuff like that, right? So basically, the program I run, it's an outpatient drug and alcohol program. We have this music portion of it where kids come in, I create rap beats for them, and they write lyrics about their difficulties of their lives, overcoming it, yada, yada, yada. And it's starting to gain some traction, so people are starting to notice it. So we've done like some local TV interviews. We did a article for the Oregon Business Journal. We did an article for Kaiser Permanente. There was an article for the Statesman Journal, the local paper. And then a representative from the Oregon House, the House of Representatives, contacted us and invited the boys who won, myself and then their family members, over to the Oregon State Capitol this last week. And she wanted to give praise to the boys for what they did in representing Oregon. So then we got to sit in on one of the House meetings, legislative meetings, where they nominate new bills and stuff like that. And during the opening ceremony of the meeting, they played our song. And so it was literally the first rap song ever played at the Oregon House of Representatives inside the Capitol building before a meeting. So I can legit say I produced the first rap song that was ever played at the Oregon State Capitol during a meeting.
So
that's
you're a rap ambassador.
I'm a rap ambassador, bro. I'm an ambassador of rap. And then the kids wrote the first song that was ever played there and stuff. And so it was kind of cool. So they played this song. And, let's be honest, in Oregon, it was like, 95% old freaking white dudes in there, and they're all like trying to bob their heads to rap music, and they're all off time and stuff like that. It was pretty funny. And I don't know if they knew what to do, right?
Oh, no, dude.
And I printed off the lyrics and sent them ahead of time, so they all had the lyrics. I had to bleep out the cuss words, so it was the PG-13 radio edit version.
All right.
And then afterwards, the representative read kind of like what the kids did, read about the accomplishment, read about how Bridgeway is helping them overcome the struggles in their lives and all that. And then everybody gave him a big round of applause. And then a bunch of the people came up, the representatives, and shook their hands, said, "Hey, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's inspiring." Cool. It was really cool for the kids, And then this one lady comes up who is the majority leader for the Oregon House of Representatives or whatever. And she hands one of the kids her business card and says, "Hey, my husband's a talent manager. We should talk." And that was pretty epic too, And so the kid turns around, he's like, "Dude, check this out." And anyway, it was pretty epic, man. So it wasn't anything to do about the Grammys, but it was about what the kids had accomplished. And again, it continues to prove to these kids that look, you can take what the world meant to do to harm to you, and if you put it in the right frame and do something positive with it, good things can happen. And I'm over it already, it was cool, but I want to move on to other things, but good things just keep happening from it, so it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. I love that these hooligans, by all society standards, got to have their day on the Capitol, and what a contrast, these politicians and their stuffy suits and their doing their politician thing, and you and your rap crew coming in and kind of stirring things up there at the Capitol. I think that's just awesome. I mean, it goes just right with everything we've been talking about on the show. But you're taking these fringe people and you're bringing them into the fold.
Yeah, exactly. Bring them into the fold.
Yeah, and they're starting to dream about things past this moment. And that's we need more. Young people kind of getting a picture of the way our politics work in this country. So the fact that they're there and they kind of get to observe that and they get to be celebrated in that moment, that's awesome. That's so incredibly cool. And
it was pretty epic, man. And the coolest part is like, it continues to show to these kids that if they do good, if they consistently try to do good, then good things will happen and good things will be returned to them and stuff like that. Like it says, the word doesn't go out and come back void. And what they're doing is not so much, they're not so much like putting out God's word, but essentially they're saying truths about their lives. They're being vulnerable with their lives, and good things are returning from that vulnerability, which is really cool. You know what I'm saying? So again, just a super cool thing, super cool that people are recognizing it, and I'm really grateful that people are recognizing it. And couldn't be more fun, It's just kind of epic.
Well, so that is super cool. I love it. It is awesome, and it's just continuing to ride the same wave, man. I mean, what a cool thing that started with not a whole lot of people knowing about this project, and now there's just a ton of eyes on it, and that's just awesome. And I'm just hoping that you guys just keep doing it. I hope you keep winning tickets to the Grammys and to all sorts of different things. And these students just get to see a life outside of addiction.
Can I say one more thing about it too, T?
Yeah.
Sometimes like bad comparison, but like, when Noah built the ark and everybody thought he was crazy, and like, it's kind of like that. Like for a long time, for a year and a half, when we were doing this music project thing, I didn't think I was like, is this doing something? Like, here I am, I'm late 30s making rap music and kids are writing lyrics for it and stuff. Like, is this like a middle-age crisis or something like that? I just was doubting it for so long. And then the other day at the Capitol, it was just super cool. It was like, here we are, and like, here we are. Yeah. And music I made and lyrics these kids wrote. And this idea that I had is now kind of just bearing so much fruit. And so really just an encouragement to all those guys out there and girls out there who, like, when you're doing your program and it's working by the fruit that you see, don't worry about praise from other people and stuff. Like, that'll come. And if that's the only thing you seek, then that's going to be the full, the total of the reward, and like, this was never about getting these kind of recognitions. This was always about the kids. And this other stuff's been cool, and it has been validating, but I knew it was effective just by the way the kids were reacting to it and stuff. So I just want to offer an encouragement, man, to all those youth workers out there who what you're doing is effective. Keep doing it. Keep grinding. And one day it may be glorified, and one day it may not. But if it's effective, keep it up, man. Because so many times I doubted this thing, and I wanted to throw it away and just do regular group stuff because that's easier. But take risks. Try new things. Don't be afraid to fail, because, man, cool things can happen from it,
Absolutely. That's a good segue into my win of the week. Whenever you start something new, whenever you decide, like, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of other people doing these types of things, it's a pretty vulnerable spot to be in, to say the least.
Vulnerable, yeah.
It's incredibly, especially when you're producing something and then putting it out there for people to critique or consume or do something with it, and so that's just an incredibly vulnerable spot to put yourself in, and it's a spot that a lot of people in their late 30s won't put themselves in, and so I'm super proud that you did it, and that now you're getting a lot of appreciation for it, and again, that's not why you did it. Like, all of this thing,
not at all.
This is the fruit of what what's been a 2 or 3 year project for you. And there was no fruit for a long time. You had to literally spend a lot of time just grinding it out and just knowing that it was effective for you and your students. And I think that's all you could hope for in most projects. And so this is kind of the best of those things. Is now it's like, now there's affirmation in it, and it's really, really, really cool. And then also, and I'll say this to the randos out there, it is when you start getting recognition, and you start experiencing success, that oftentimes you'll start facing your biggest trials inside of ministry. And they're going to usually rotate around your successes. And those are the times when you have to purify your motives, kind of go back to like, why am I doing this? What is this for? Am I doing this for the praise of man, or if I'm doing this to be a good minister? And you got to constantly do that, because the success, you can very easily lose your way. And I think that's one of the things that you have to continue to tell yourself is and that's kind of a good segue to where I'm at, and what my win of the week was this week, is the 1 minute message. And this has been a past one for me. This has been a past win of the week for me, but kind of like you, Sonny, it's something that kind of keeps popping back up.
Yeah, man.
It's something that it's like, whoa, this is doing things I never thought it would do. And just a little backstory, if you don't want to go back and listen to the first 11 episodes of this podcast, I started doing these 1 minute messages to minister to my students. I sort of figured out that a lot of my students were absent from youth group, not because they wanted to be, but because life took them away from it. And so they wanted to have other ways to sort of relate and experience youth when they couldn't make it to the youth service on Sunday nights. And so I came up with this idea on Snapchat to start cutting these 1 minute messages. And I would just take a message and I would reduce it to its irreducible minimum. You know, there's no fluff, there's nothing else. It basically is just a message in 1 minute. It's not a recap video. It's not a highlight video. Here's a message that you can consume in 1 minute. And the way I sort of described it, Sonny, is like, it's like a Jesus energy bar. It's accessible, it's consumable.
Get some protein.
And it'll get you through
protein.
Yeah, it'll just get you there, man. And so that's what these 1 minute messages were. They're all for my students. And a while back I had one trend on Reddit, and that was awesome. That was really, really cool. And that kind of got me started on like, okay, these could mean something more to people who are not just in my youth ministry, because there's other people saying, hey, I want to be a part of this. I want to see more of these. And so I've been spending a little bit more time with them, and they're becoming a staple of who I'm becoming in ministry, in the similar way that, your music thing is becoming a staple of who you are in the counseling field. These 1 minute messages are doing that for me. And so that was verified again this week, when I went and kind of just looked at my first, I produced 10 1 minute messages, and I was just like, I was just kind of doing an audit of them, like what's effective, what's not effective, kind of looking at that stuff. And I kind of got to just kind of take down the numbers and the views and all that stuff. So yeah, I did a little audit, and I found out that my 1 minute messages, the first 10, if you kind of just put a sum up of that things, have been viewed, get this, Sonny, 200,000 times, over 200,000.
200,000 randos. That's awesome.
200,000 people, and my youth group is not 200,000 people.
Yes, it is. Now it is.
It's not even close to that. But
you are officially the Josh Fierstein of this podcast.
Yes. I am. And I even wear a red hat in most of my one things. So I realized
and you have a beard.
Like, I'm just sort of taking his his platform away from him.
You are the cooler version.
Yeah, hopefully, and more theologically sound.
Yes.
Anyway, no, dude, this is, and again, what you said is exactly right. If you do this for the praise of men, the reward is the praise of men.
The praise of men,
and it will fade. This is not, and that's why I have to continue to say, you got to purify your motives in this. The second you start to think in these videos, man, how will they view this on Instagram, or how will they view this on YouTube, and how's Reddit going to handle this, or how TikTok is going to handle this? Is the second you get far from where you started,
Yep.
And so for me, I've got to continually say, I'm not going to make a video that's going to do well online that's going to mean nothing to my students. Because then I'm forsaking what this thing is and what God started here. And so all of my videos, they directly relate to things I'm seeing in youth culture and things I want to address and things I want to tell people about. I want to tell my students about life and love and why, and so that's kind of where I'm at. So it's a cool win. There's no money in this, right? Like I'm not sponsored. Getting all these views hasn't helped me get anything else. It's not like it's really helping the podcast take off or anything like that. So it really is just a cool idea that there's a lot of people out there who are also enjoying these things and consuming them, and their lives are being blessed by these 1-minute messages. So I'm incredibly excited about what this means and what this will mean going forward. But it's just cool, man. 200,000 people. I mean, my goodness, man. When is Joel Osteen going to call me and say, "Hey, come be my youth pastor"? When is that going to happen?
I think he preaches to 200,000 people like face to face every weekend. So I don't know. TJ, but I think
40,000 people. 40,000 people.
Well, he probably has like 3 services. And I think the reason they're so successful on the internet to the randos and the casuals is because it didn't start out that way, right? Yeah. It started out as a ministry to your students.
Yeah.
And so therefore it started out being nothing else but effective at reaching your kids. That was the only reason you did it. And then you started posting them online, and then they were effective there because they were first effective where they should have been effective, and that was targeting your kids on social media where they were at, because they're only at youth group for 2 hours a week out of their 168 hours, and so it was a way to reach them when they're not there. And so the motive was pure and intentional and had meaning behind it, And I think that's so counterproductive in our culture today, where nowadays so many things you see on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, they're all designed for Instagram and YouTube and whatever, and this had the opposite of it, and that's why it was gaining traction. And I don't think that's a coincidence,
No, our win of the weeks are very similar in this way. They're ground level things that blew up beyond the ground level. That's what they are. They're different ways that we found that were effective to reach young people. That's what we were trying to do. And there's a longer backstory to both of them. That it was, we were doing this when no one was looking, and that and we were doing this not to have anybody look at us. We were doing this to help students. And so, in that way, it's just really cool that we have this podcast to sort of highlight this thing that's going on. And ours are vastly
to talk about
different.
How cool we are, right?
To talk about how cool we are, to pat ourselves on the back because no one else is. As if we weren't getting enough recognition. Me and you can come on here and recognize each other at this point. But that's it, man. It's cool because they parallel, right? They parallel just me and you grinding. I mean, me and you are veteran youth ministers. It's not like we're, overnight successes here.
I lost all my hair because of this damn thing. Darn thing, sorry.
And there it is. The first swear on the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Took 12 episodes. That's
You know what? You've done good, Sonny. Actually, we're pretty
proud. I know. 12
episodes for you to get there. Anyway.
Well, but again, that's why I want to reiterate, this isn't about glorifying what we were doing. What I really want the message to be is that if you're a youth worker and you know what you're doing is effective, keep doing that. And don't let anybody tell you, well, I used to work with youth 20 years ago. Well, I studied youth ministry and this is what you... Don't listen to those people. You do what you know is effective, that is also moral and is also above the board. But if you know it's effective and it's getting the job done and students' lives are being changed, then keep doing that. And don't let anybody sway you from that. Now, obviously, don't go get fired and don't do something illegal and keep it above board. But just don't be discouraged by people who've always done something a certain way and they think that's the only way it can be done. Because yes, there's been a lot of innovation in working with kids, but there's still so much to do and so much to go. And especially in the States, when you look across the country or across the world, there's a lot of people doing different things. Sometimes it's a little weird to us, but it's effective, you know? And so don't let anybody discourage you from what you know is effective. Like, keep grinding, keep doing it, and good things will happen. If the only good thing that happens is the kids are being ministered to in a healthy way and their lives are being changed, then that's it. There is no greater praise than that, man.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly right. I mean, that's so much. And here, there's just one piece I want to hit on here, and I know that we're going along with this one of the week, but is that there is this. I'm trying to put it into words here. There is a lot of ministers, counselors, youth workers who will look at the mediums students are into, and they will just criticize them. They will just criticize them. They will just go to the place of this is bad. This is everything that's wrong with our culture. Everything that's wrong with our culture is that they can only listen to something like a minute at a time, you know, and that's bad. We got to train them to listen to 3-hour sermons. We got to get back to the olden days. Well, the olden days aren't going to happen again. Like I was reading that presidential debates used to go on for like 12 hours at a time, like 12 hours. These guys would do that. That would never fly. That would never fly here, So you have to figure out ways to get it, to get your message condensed. And it's in the same way with you, with a lot of counselors will look at rap culture as this just terrible evil that's happened to students. And they'll make their bones on criticizing that culture forever. And both me and you, we saw it and we know the criticisms and we actually hold a few of those criticisms in our own heart. Sure, and we'll talk about those on the show. But we didn't just say, okay, I'm not going to be involved in this. I'm not going to do this anymore. We took the culture that we saw that was developing and we jumped on it. We said, okay, I think I can do that. And you with rap music and me with, this idea that I'm going to do a 1 minute packed message that other people can listen to. And that's just seeing where culture's going and jumping on it and being surfers of those waves. And I think that's the real win here. So I love that, me and you kind of keep having the same win that kind of keeps popping up, but that's awesome. That's awesome that it's unique. It's a different take on youth work and I love doing it.
Be in the world, not of the world, right? I mean, doesn't that just encapsulate it right there?
That's it, man. That's it.
All right, Ted Francis McConaughey II. Your dad's been posting some really cool stuff on Facebook. Not sure if you're following that or not. Tales from the Fringe. Tales from the Fringe. It's where me and you share stories of our past and working with kids. I got a pretty kind of a sad story. It's going to be kind of a downer. So I don't know if you want to go first. You want me to go first?
So why don't you lead with that, and then I can cheer people up at the end because I got a happier story.
All right. Several years ago, when I kind of first started working as a drug and alcohol counselor, I met this kid, and his name was Tom. His name wasn't Tom, but I'm going to call him Tom for sake of the purpose. Anyway, Tom came from the rough side of the tracks, you could say. Never met his father, single mom, tried her best, didn't have a lot of family and didn't have a lot of support around. And Tom just grew up a street kid and just struggled. I think he started smoking weed when he was about 12 and just had a rough go. I first met him when he was about 14, and I came into treatment, worked with him for about 6-7 months, didn't really make any progress, and he ended up going into what's called OYA, which is the Oregon Youth Authority, and that is like state-level supervision. So kids start out usually at county-level supervision, which is probation, and then they move into state-level supervision, which is kind of like prison for kids, so to say. He was sent to a youth correctional facility for several months. Then he came out of the youth correctional facility, went to some different programs in the area, and then finally came back to my location and started doing services again. He was a little bit older. He was about 17. And then he turned 18. He was still kind of coming. Still struggling, man. Showed up one time to group, had a bandage and a cast on his hand. And I'm like, Tom, like what's going on, bro? He just looked horrible, And he says, oh man, I got stabbed in the hand. Like, what do you mean you got stabbed in the hand? And he was telling me him and his buddy were smoking meth and drinking in their room the night before, and his buddy throws a knife at him because that's what you do.
Oh my gosh!
When you smoke meth and drink beer together, and he put his hand up, and the knife literally almost went through his whole entire hand.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway, so just crazy, right? Just nuts.
Yeah.
Then and then he kind of just disappears, and I don't see him again. Then I get a call one day from his probation officer, who I'd worked with for a number of years at that point. And this is about 2 years into my career. And it was the call you don't want to get. And it was the only call I've ever had since, and it was the only call I had before. And Tom died. And his mom had come out to go to work one morning, and she finds him in the garage, and he had gotten into huffing, and he was dead. So then I go to his funeral, right? I go to his funeral, and I'm like,
Sonny, just for everybody, what is huffing?
Oh, so huffing is like, you take aerosol cans or he was doing spray paint cans. And you put a rag over it, and then you huff the fumes that come out of it, and kind of cuts off the oxygen in your brain and gives you kind of a high.
Okay.
Anyway, so he done too much, and he died. His mom comes. I mean, it's a horrible story. Mom comes out on her way to work on a Tuesday and finds him laying in the garage, and it kind of broke me, man. It tore me up there for a bit. So so I go to the funeral, and of course I was going to go to the funeral. So I go to the funeral, and there wasn't a lot of people there. There was a few of his friends, a few of the kids that I had in treatment before, and his mom was there, and she was kind of a wreck, obviously given the situation. And he had some family members there, and they kind of had a little there was a little viewing thing of photos and different things that he was into and stuff like that. But it wasn't a lot because Tom didn't really do a lot of other things outside of drugs, and so then it came time to everybody kind of just sat down in this big circle. And then his mom says, hey, I'd like for people to just, say something nice about Tom, say something that you remember about him, and say something that you enjoyed about him. And then it was quiet. And then nobody said anything.
Whoa.
It was like about 30 seconds, and people were just sitting there. And I remember it was the weirdest feeling I've ever been in, man. And literally, the weirdest time I think I've ever been in my life. Nobody said anything positive about this kid. Then finally his uncle goes, well, he liked cars. And that was it.
That's it.
And that was the only thing said. And so finally I'm like, man, it's a horrible situation that we're here, but Tom was lively and he was this.
So you got up there and
yeah, so I said some stuff, because I was like, nobody's going to say anything. Yeah. And after I said something, it was about another minute of silence, and that was it. And then the mom ended that, and then everybody, started getting food, and then I kind of, I talked to a few of the kids, and then I left, and I just remember driving away, just going, I don't ever want to be in this situation again, and what a horrible situation to be in. That at your own funeral, nobody has anything to say about you other than you liked cars. And I think, honestly, to this day, because I still have the newspaper clipping of it in my office, that moment has kind of driven me to work with these kids and kind of think outside the box and think about, how do I effectively reach these kids? Because to be honest, TJ, I felt like I had failed. It was like this kid died of drugs, and here I am supposed to be the drug and alcohol counselor, supposed to help him. And, stuff happens. It's going to happen. Statistics say the longer you're in this, the more chances are that it's going to happen. And it's happened to other counselors I know and work with personally and stuff. But still, it just kind of rocked me, man. And it really kind of became a catalyst for how I look at and how I work with youth in the sense that, so much of their lives have little to no hope. And how do you inspire and how do you provide hope to them? So that way, when they do die, the only thing said is not he liked cars. Oh man, just talk about just a sad situation, and both for the kid and for the mom, and just a rough feeling, And so I want to tell the story because, the last few weeks it's like, oh man, you working with youth is the best thing ever, and I want to be a drug and alcohol counselor. I get to go to the Grammys, but it's not always like that, There are definitely low lows when you do this kind of job, and it's kind of on both ends of the continuum, So
Man, Sonny, that's just heartbreaking. And I guess that's it. We oftentimes all sit there and think like, what is someone going to say about me at my funeral? And it's weird that that's a motivating thing. Like, we're not going to be there. To be absent from this body is to be present in heaven, right? Like that's not going to be for us. And it's crazy that we do funerals for the people who die, but they're not really for the people who die. No matter what your perspective is on this stuff, they're not there. If you're a Christian, you believe to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. It's not like you become omnipresent and you get to be, participating at your funeral, and so it's funny that we have these moments, but even at a funeral where this is a fringe person right here, and they die in a garage because they're doing essentially street drugs, and nobody has anything to say at the funeral. And that a human life happened. So there should be something to say. And good for you, Sonny, that you got to actually rescue that moment. And I'm sure that mom is forever grateful that you were there to say something more than, about cars. And it probably goes to show you where Tom came from. As if it wasn't that he didn't have good in him. That's not the moral of the story. It's not that he didn't have good in him. It's that the people around him were so uninvolved in who Tom was that they literally had nothing to say, because I'm guessing they didn't know who he was. And that's how society can eat through people, is we just don't notice them. And I think we always assume, well, at least they're family, you got like a face showing your family loves, and that's not the case. And pretty much every kid that we work with that we would call fringe usually has parental situations that are undesirable, to say the least. And so, man, what a heartbreaking story. But thank you for telling it. And I guess maybe thank you for honoring Tom's memory even here on the Fringe podcast. That person lived a life that was worth speaking about, and I think it's more of an indictment on the people who are at that funeral.
And it's also, to me, it's always been a reminder of no one's a junkie, right? Like that phrase, that guy's a junkie. That's a horrible phrase, because everybody's created in God's image, and when you look past the using and the behavior and the foul mouth and the anger, usually it's a hurt person with some pretty strong defenses up so they don't get hurt again. And I think it's our job, especially if you work with youth, to fight past those defenses, or maybe a better term is to love past those defenses and heal that hurt. And that should be the goal of every person that works with Fringe Youth, in my eyes.
Yep. Love past those defenses. I love that. That'll be a quote. Love past the defenses. Awesome, Sonny. Well, that is a sad one, but it's worth mentioning. And I like how you contrast it to the idea of the success that you're experiencing right now, is that, the grind of what you do and the grind of what I do, it isn't just all awesome and easy. And there is very real, very heartbreaking moments. And that's it. So I'm going to transition to my story. My story is actually about me on the Fringe. Again, the reason Sonny and I have found a lot of work with students on the Fringe of society is because me and Sonny are students who are on the Fringe. We were rescued by people who were Fringe youth workers at one point, and that's why we've given our lives to these things. And so this is a story about me. I came to know Jesus when I was 16 years old. I'll tell that whole story at some point on the Fringe, but I came to know Jesus when I was 16 years old, and at about 16 and a half, I got the call to go into youth ministry. And a very real feeling, a very real Holy Spirit moment where God, called me to be a youth pastor, not just a pastor, not just like a general minister, but to be a youth pastor. And from that point on, from the time I was 16 till, today, that hasn't changed. However, there was a lot of obstacles to get me there. First of all, I was an incredibly feral student. I had so many things that I had to learn about church and church culture, and I had to get my knocks. I had to get a lot of knocks. Let's just say that. And one of the things that had happened in my life was I was a terrible student, Sonny. Terrible student. Not probably because I wasn't very smart. That probably was a little bit of it. But because I was pretty lazy and I had some really bad habits of just not doing homework. In fact, Sonny, in high school, I don't think I did any homework. Like, I don't think I ever
I believe you.
I don't think I ever did any homework. And I think the classes that I passed, I've always been able to be kind of charming because of my humor. There's a lot of teachers, I think, who let me get by on my charm. And that was probably to my own and to the system's detriment. But, that didn't save me any, because by the time I graduated, I barely graduated. In fact, they found some credits. A counselor called me and said, "Hey, guess what? You can graduate because we found some credits." I'm like, "Where were they?" Don't ask that question, boy. Just get your cap and gown.
Is there money there too?
Yeah. Get out. You just got to get out of this system, But I graduated with this, no joke, a 1.3 GPA.
Heck yeah,
1.3 GPA. And again, I still had this very real call from the Lord that I was going to be a youth pastor. And so I applied to the school that my youth pastor went to, Multnomah University, with great references, with actually some pretty good essays that I had to write, and everything that was ready to rock and roll, except for I had a 1.3 GPA. And so about 6 months before I'm supposed to show up to Bible college to really pursue this dream, I got a letter from Multnomah saying that my application had been denied. Denied. And dude, it rocked me. It rocked me. I couldn't believe it. Like, in my head, I don't know why I thought this would be a problem. I thought, well, they're a Christian organization. They got to accept people who want to be ministers. I mean, what are they going to do? Take these worldly GPA things and measure people by that. That's not what Christians do. And I had the whole idea that, they would look past that because all the other things were good. And, they didn't. And it was an academic institution, and they knew that I wasn't ready. And so I got that thing, and I thought, God, why would you call me to do something that I'm not even qualified to do? And I did this thing. I always do this thing, Sonny, where if I got something going on that's heavy on my heart, I just get in my car and I drive.
Yeah.
I think that's a dude thing to do, right? Like, like I'm going to go work it out, and I'm going to go drive somewhere, and I'm driving and I'm crying and I'm driving and I'm crying. And I end up in Forks, Washington. Shout out to Forks, Washington. This is before we knew that there was vampires running around there.
Yeah, shout out to the vampire show.
Yeah, that's right. The Twihards out there. So I ended up in Forks from Port Angeles, which is like an hour and a half drive, and I'd never been to Forks before. By the way, there's nothing out there. There wouldn't even, it's just kind of a dead town.
You want to know a fun fact about Forks?
What is it?
It's the most. It rains there more than any other place in the country.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
It makes sense. It's like one of the most northwest places you can get in the United States. Anyway, so I end up in Forks, and I don't have a cell phone. This is before I had a cell phone, and I get out of the car and I think I got to make a call to Britt, who's my girlfriend at the time. And I'm like, she's not gonna like this. She's gonna know that I'm a failure and I'm a fraud, and all the things that I've told myself all the way to Forks about myself. And I get on the phone. I use a payphone, right? Like, I get in this payphone booth, and I get on the phone, and I'm just teary eyed, and I'm like, Britt, I don't know if you want to be with me, but because I'm not going to be a youth pastor because Multnomah doesn't think I should be one. She's like, what? What's going on? Like, what happened? Tell me, what's going on? And I tell her, they sent me this denial, and they're like, well, is that all they said in the letter? And like, no, they said some other things. It's like, what did they say? It's like, well, they considered it, and that they want me to go to community college for a year and get my grades up. And no joke, she just goes, so why don't you just go to community college for a year and get your grades up? And I sit there like, well, I didn't think of that. like in my head, in my emotion, it was the end of the line. Like this call that God gave me was no more because I didn't get in the first time I tried. And so I was like, man, so anyway, and this is kind of cool because in Washington we have this Running Start program where juniors can start college. Juniors in high school can start their college classes. So Britt was still in high school at this time. I think she was a senior in high school, and I was just starting, and she just started her program at Running Start, and I got to start my college things, and we were actually in the same classes at the community college in Port Angeles. And that was awesome for me because that meant that I had a built-in tutor. She's a 4.0 student the whole way through, super awesome student. She's, she killed at academia. And it meant that, we got to do the same classes together, and she just tutored me. She taught me, my wife taught me how to write a paper. She taught me how to study for a test. She did all those things as a senior in high school, with her bum boyfriend who didn't get into college. And man, I had to work hard, Sonny. Like I had to get a 2.5 before they would even look at my application again. And I worked so hard for a 2.5. And that's probably going to sound to a lot of listeners like, oh, wow, that doesn't sound that hard. For somebody who hadn't done homework ever, that was a very hard task. And I was working full time at the same time. So I was living on my own. I had my own house. I was renting with a buddy, and I was working full time, and I was having to be a full time student, and I had to work hard to become a 2. And I got it. I just got it. Exactly 2.5. I applied to Multnomah again once the grades came out, and I got another letter sent to me about 3 months before I would be at Multnomah, and I was so scared to even open it. You know what I mean? Like it was like, and I just kind of sat there with it, and I invited Britt to come over and sit with me, and she kind of helped me open it, because I don't think I had the courage to open it, and I read it, and they had accepted my admission to Multnomah, and they wanted me to show up in the fall, and I showed up to Multnomah in the fall of 2005. Already having a year of college done, which saved me a ton of money anyway. But then I took my application. I took that letter where they had approved it, and I framed it, Sonny, and I put it on my wall in my dorm. And here's the funny thing is students would come in there and go, why did you frame? We all got one of these. And I'd look at them.
You don't know what went into my letter, though.
Yeah, and I go, yeah, but you guys didn't get the first one I got. And that was it, man. That was a story of that. That's the idea here of, God rescuing me, saving me, sanctifying me, and then working me through the process of getting my life on track so that I could do the things that he had called me to do. And that's that idea of resiliency. I think that we talk a lot about this on the thing, but, my wife had to kind of just say, you're not being very resilient here, TJ. You've gotta know that there is another option here where your dreams are still available. And the thing is, I graduated from Multnomah 3 years later, Sonny, so I didn't even lose a year. It wasn't like I'd gone backwards. It was just that I had to do something that I wasn't planning on doing, and I was ready to give up. And I think that was the beginning of God teaching me how to be resilient. A year later, I was an RA, and then I ended up graduating from Multnomah with like a 3.4 GPA, which I was so proud of. And then I went back and got a master's degree, and I got like a 3.8 GPA in my master's program. And that's just God turning the whole thing around. And that's the idea of a fringe kid coming in, and God just working, and people loving this fringe kid. And I'm so thankful to this day that I had so many people, and I had a God who believed in me, because I wouldn't have made it this far.
An interesting topic that came up a lot over the last few weeks in my life has been self-doubt. And why is it with human beings, and it seems to be the case with everybody, unless, you got some random weirdos out there, but self-doubt seems to be the go-to. The default response is we doubt ourselves, and then we have to convince ourselves or have other people convince us that we can do better. Like, why is it not the opposite? Why isn't it that we have extreme confidence in ourselves, and that people have to talk us out of crazy ideas or something like that? it just seems like, like the classic saying of, you're having a great hair day, and you get 10 compliments on it, like, man, your hair's rocking, and I'm saying this hypothetically, obviously, right? And people say you have 10 people say you have great hair. The one person who says, man, did you not comb your hair this morning? That's the one comment you'll focus on, right? Versus the 10 positive comments. And you can take this to any aspect of your life. Like, we focus on the one negative versus the 10 positive. And I'm always curious about why that's the default, And I think in the Word it talks about, this is why I'm not a youth pastor. But it talks in there about when the Israelites had to set up the markers of the stone markers, right, to remember what the Lord had done for them, because they would always doubt that the Lord would come through. And so they had to set up those reminders over and over and over again to say, hey, look it, the Lord's got us through more intense stuff than what we're currently going through. Let's trust him again instead of doubting him and instead of doubting ourselves and stuff like that. So why do you think self-doubt is the go-to? Because your story was a perfect illustration of that. You got the letter. You're like, my life is over. My girlfriend's going to dump me. She's going to find out I'm an idiot, and I'm going to work in a welding shop for the rest of my life. Right? That's your thought. Yeah. And then Britt's like, no, dummy, just go to college and come with me. You're like, oh, okay. and I do the same thing. I catastrophize everything. And my wife kind of brings me back to reality, or somebody else does and stuff. Yeah. So, like, why do you think self-doubt is such the go-to,
I think, I think it just goes to that place of we are our own biggest critics, and we're all just kind of hoping that there's certain criticisms that you can get. Like, when I post these videos online, there's always trolls that always talk about it, right? And most of the time I can write it off as those are trolls, but there's a few of them that ring true to my own criticisms of myself. And they hit a spot, man. And it's like, they see it, and in my own head, like, that's where I go. It's like a panic place. It's like, okay, they get it. They understand that I'm a fraud. They get that I'm not supposed to be doing these things that and so there's certain critiques, man. There's certain things that are just, there's soft spots, man. And for me, education was a soft spot for me for so long, Sonny. And so the place I went to was self-doubt. Of course, I'm not supposed to be a youth pastor. Why would I ever think that? And I think that's what happens, is that we immediately go to the place when a criticism rings true to the criticism that we hold of ourselves. That's when it hurts the worst. And I think resiliency can say, you know what? You're right. And I think that's the best way to silence a critic, is to agree with them. Try to be better than your critics. I started this thing on my videos. Whenever I got like a bad comment, instead of deleting it, which you can do on most of the platforms, you can just delete the comments. I go to their page, and if they posted a video, I figure out a way to compliment one of their videos on my page. I say, hey, thank you for your comment. I saw that you did a video where you were dancing with your son. That was a cool video. Hey, we have something to agree on. And then I say, have a good day, And it's like it could be seen as being kind of a jack A, but it's not being a jack A, because I believe that verse that bless those who curse you, And I think that we spend a lot of time cursing ourselves in our own brains. And I think that sometimes we have to fight the own criticism in our own head, and actually pour on blessing to ourselves. And I know that sounds like a super millennial thing to say right there. It's like, we need to bless ourselves. But I believe it. I think that, we criticize, we go to self-doubt. And when we do those things, we end up hurting ourselves. And the two wins that we talked about in this win of the week, if me and you did not have resiliency, which we were taught through different things that happened to us when we were growing up, sure, we wouldn't have experienced the success that we've been experiencing lately. There would have my thing would have died on the backs of YouTube comments, and yours would have died in another way. But we have the resiliency to take those licks and just keep moving forward.
It's in counseling we talk about, like, if I were to tell you, don't think about a purple rhinoceros with wings, what are you thinking about right now? You're thinking about a purple rhinoceros with wings, right? And so, when a kid has anxiety and you just say, oh, just don't think about it. Like, that just doesn't work. Then you spend all your time thinking about it, and then you have more anxiety thinking about it. Where instead, kind of the mindfulness practice is let the thought exist and let it just exist as a thought. Like, you're not going to eradicate it, so let it exist and then just let it pass, like think of it as a wave. It'll come and it'll go. And so like when you have those trigger thoughts that kind of really get under your skin, it's like you don't have to really sit there and try to fight them, because you'll spend more energy fighting them and you won't get anywhere. But let them exist, realize who you are, and then let them pass and stuff like that. So.
You're still listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Question of the week. This is where I roam the internet for awesome questions, and I give them to Sonny on the spot. I literally put him right on the spot. He says he works better on the spot.
I like it that way.
It really goes to his
if
bad
I
motivation.
think, TJ, if I think, I get in my own way.
Yeah, you get in your own way. So you like it when you don't have to think.
Yes.
And I'm the complete opposite. If I'm just right on the spot, I get really not good. So I need time to think about it. So Sonny, what is, and this is I think this is a good question especially for our thing. What is something that in youth culture you are hopeful about right now?
Nothing.
Okay, maybe Sonny's not so good on the spot. I take that back. I mean, I don't really thank you for that answer, Sonny. I guess I'll say something
No. Okay. What is something I am hopeful about in youth culture? Is that the question?
Yeah, something you are hopeful about.
That's a good question. Well, I think when you look at statistics of teen pregnancy and teen drinking and smoking weed and all that kind of stuff, they're all lowered. And you could attribute that to a lot of different things. But when you compare it to the stats, 20 years ago and stuff like that in the 90s and even early 2000s, teen pregnancy is lower, teen alcohol use is lower, and teen cannabis use is lower across the board. And that's cool. That gives me hope. And maybe that's just new information. Maybe it's just more access to information. I don't know what it is, but that's cool. And maybe teens are protecting themselves more. There was a girl the other day in group, and she was kind of getting rowdy, and she told one of the female counselors, they're talking about boyfriends and all that, and she's like, "No glove, no love." And okay.
All right, you heard it here on the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast first. No glove, no love.
No glove, no love. And if abstinence can't be the goal, then I guess that's the next best thing. So So I would say those are all be lowered. And if you had asked me without the stats, I would think they're higher, but it's not. So that's pretty cool. That gives me hope.
Yeah. This is going to sound a weird one, but I'm really encouraged by the decline of Christianity in America. And somebody just like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, Billy Graham just rolled over in his grave when I said that.
Yeah. No, I know you're going though.
But I think that the high number of people affiliating themselves with Christianity over, predominantly over America's history meant that there was a lot of people who were faking the funk. There was a lot of faux Christianity because, everyone's a Christian. So if everyone's a Christian, then, the salesman who wants to sell you shoes, he's going to be a Christian too. And there's a lot of people who are checking the box, but they have no love for Jesus, and they're not really interested in following him. And I think anytime Christianity, you can look back on the history of Christianity, but anytime the Christianity has embedded itself with the powers that be in every different empire over the years, it's when Christianity got most of its heresies. It's when the message and the theologies got corrupted. And the reverse is true as well, is whenever the church was persecuted, those were the times when it grew the most. Because I don't know what that is, but you can't put out a flame that God is keeping alive. And so you look in China right now, and the Chinese church is completely underground, and it is on fire, and it is growing, and the stats on that stuff is crazy. There's so many people in China and in some of the more radical Islamic countries where there's Christians who are willing to die for their faith. And as crazy as that sounds, as crazy as this is going to sound, is I don't know a whole lot of Christians who I could say, if somebody put a gun to their head and said, "Hey, do you believe in God?" I don't know a whole lot of Christians, American versions of the Christians, that I could be just 100% confident that they'd say, "Yeah, I'm Christian." So when the church is persecuted, it tends to grow like a wild weed. But when it's in bed with power, it's corrupted. And so what I'm seeing on the youth front, Sonny, on the youth front is when a student comes out as a Christian, that's a big deal. That's a really, really, really big deal. And that has social implications, that has friendship implications, that has a lot of things that student is now saying no to, and he's saying yes to a lot of scrutiny in his own life. And that's the way the Bible sets up Christianity as, this is a narrow gate, this is a narrow path, and not everybody's going to choose this, because following Jesus is hard. And so I think as Christianity declines in America, I think actually the true faith is on an incline, and it's going up. And I'm seeing that with students. I've seen true faith coming forward, and students who are unashamed to share the gospel, and students who are going hard after Jesus in a way that students that I ministered to 12 years ago might not have. And so I'm actually encouraged by that. And I think as we go more towards the way of Europe, that might be the death of the megachurch, but it might be the life and the breath, and it might be the thing that actually saves the church for future generations.
Do you think it just weeds out the social Christians and just makes it more serious by default? Because to admit you're a Christian this day is almost to be judged instantly by those who aren't believers, So do you think it just automatically it means more to say that, and so that's why those who are?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So this is probably going to be different in different parts of the country. I remember when we were down in Houston, me and you, and I mean, the YMCA had Bible verses all over, and everybody's a Christian. And then we have a lot of people who are from the Bible Belt who listen to this podcast, so that they're not going to relate to this as much. But where we live in the Pacific Northwest, it is a lot more like Europe in the way that it's very post-Christian. And there is an assumption by a lot of non-Christian people that the church and Jesus and Christianity has been debunked, so why would anybody choose into this thing? And so that's kind of the assumption, that's kind of the thing of the day, that's the ruling philosophy of the day. And so there isn't a whole lot of social Christians. I mean, that's like admitting you go to the bar 4 times a week, why would you do that? You're a dummy, even if you do that, like, you're not telling anybody about it. And there was an episode of Silicon Valley. Do you watch that show, Silicon Valley?
One of my favorite shows. Yeah.
Where one of the students, not one of the students, but one of the characters comes out as Christian, and they did it like the whole irony was, it was like they were coming out of the closet, because in Silicon Valley, to come out as a Christian that's taboo. That's the taboo right there. And so I think that actually that actually meant, anyway, my kids are running in the background here, but they just got home. Yeah, I think that's just where we're at right now, Sonny. To answer your question, yes, there's just not a whole lot of social Christians anymore. And I just want to say this just really quick in closing. Thank you to all the randos out there who listen to the show, and you guys call this show your home. You're talking online, and you're excited, and you're having conversations about what we're having. That's the whole dream here, is to start a community of people who are interested in this discussion around how do we reach the next generation, especially those on the edge of society. And so thank you for being a part of that. If you listen to the show but you haven't gone to our Instagram page, you haven't gone to our Facebook page, you haven't gone to our YouTube page, you're missing out. There's community happening there, and we want you to be involved in it. I have people who are in my sphere who keep coming up to me and saying, hey, you talked about this on the show, and I feel weird saying this to them. I'm like, can you just take this conversation online, please? Like, I know you have direct access to me, but there's
so many want to talk to them in real life.
Well, I do talk to them in real life, but I'm just saying, hey, after we have the conversation, I say, this would be a great thing to ask online. And so anyway, that's a long way to say, please join us online. Let's let this conversation happen all week long, so that we can continue to do this show, and it continues to mean something to us.
Thank you for listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. Don't believe anything